Hey everyone, I'm Anne. Welcome to the Let's Get Naked podcast, where we dive deep into vulnerability. In this space, we'll explore what triggers us, uncover the patterns holding us back, and discover how to take charge of our own growth. If you're ready to dig in, be vulnerable, and face the tough stuff, then buckle up. It's time to get naked. So for our listeners who have maybe heard kind of the progression of the podcast, as we've started and developed it, you will notice that at the beginning, we just started diving right into things. Then we've played around with kind of a rant that I'll do that just sets the stage for who I'm interviewing that day. And I received some feedback recently from someone that has a spot at my table of life that said, no one wants to hear you read at the beginning of the podcast. And so I'm going to try something different that is not setting the stage for what we're going to go into today. But I will say that I am a little bit nervous about this conversation because this is about as naked as I get by bringing on my person and what all of that looks like. So today I'm going to be interviewing my husband, Cameron. And as I was thinking about how to introduce him, because he is all of the things for me, I struggled with that. I struggled with how to relay to someone. My voice is actually shaking. I don't know if you can feel that. But I take my own advice and I speak my truth even if my voice shakes. He's all the things to me. So this is a very vulnerable thing for me to have him come on. I know that we had an episode with him and his best friend Les early on in the show, and that was okay. But being here, just him and I talking about his things and my things feels very vulnerable to me. And he's been brave enough when I asked him, hey, what are you okay with me talking about? And he says, I'm an open book. We're going to test that today. So welcome to the show, Cameron.
Yeah, thank you. Can't wait.
Yeah, can't wait. You may reserve that for after the show. So as I was preparing for today's podcast, just for our listeners, how I prepare is pretty random. I am not this person that has a set anything. I just kind of let the universe or the big guy tell me what we're going to talk about. And I allow that to come in the week as I'm preparing for whoever the guest is. And so I was chewing around on things with what to talk with Cameron about, because there's just so much and I want to be able to have it have an impact. And yesterday I found something that a note that he had wrote in one of my notebooks from about a year ago. And it just struck me that that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. And so I'm going to set the stage a little bit, and then you can jump in and tell me your perspective on things. So for those of you that know, or for those of you that don't know, I have been working on myself pretty aggressively for the last 6 to 9 years. It's almost been 9 years since I got sober. And I've been picking up steam in the last couple of years because I feel like I've really been able to sharpen the tools that I'm learning and develop the things about myself that I wasn't in touch with, have really focused a lot of energy on getting aligned. And Cameron has had a front row seat to that. And that probably looks pretty wild and crazy because I am not the version of Anne that he started out with. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cameron and I have been married for 20 plus. We're just going to leave it at the plus because like I just mentioned, I'm not going to keep count past that point. I feel like we made it, ish. And that doesn't mean we did, tomorrow the wheels won't fall off, but that means I can stop counting. So, we've been together for a long time, and he has seen all of the versions of Anne, the 2.0, the 3.0, the 4.2, all of the versions. And as he's watched and as I've gone, I'm have gotten to a place more recently where I have been more adamant about dragging him along with me as it relates to his emotional intelligence and his understanding of who he is and what has made up his recipe, what ingredients go into that, and helping him be more self-aware, which feels like an invasion of everything.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like when it comes to most things, I'm a pretty hard case. And so I think I've been the guinea pig in your journey as far as, the test case for how things work and whatever. And if they have an effect on me, of all people, then there's probably some legitimacy there.
That's what I believe too. So this episode is my resume builder for the male listeners that we have, so that they understand that there's something to this. As a description of who Cameron has been his entire life, he is very. I'm fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Not the victim. Has the male base layer of anger and rage and all of the things that I think typical kind of men that I know and have, run in our circles, that whole thing that they carry. Cameron is the epitome of that. He has worn it well. And, but this note that I am going to read from about a year ago is, a year to 18 months is kind of when I became more, what's the right word? Forceful.
You used aggressive earlier.
Aggressive is probably right, but with inviting Cameron to become more self-aware, because as I've done all of this work, it became impossible for me to really have deep connections with the old version of Cameron. Not that I don't love him and not that I don't think he's my person, but as I was growing, if I'm not standing next to somebody who's also doing their work, it didn't feel like an authentic, aligned path for me. And so I feel like I was able to kind of get through to him about 18 months ago, or a year ago, to really start unpacking his own bullshit. Cameron has come from a place where I didn't have trauma. That's what he says. And then we start talking through some stuff, and it's like, oh, fuck. Okay. I had some valid points and some leg to stand on with any of that. So Cameron had told me in relation to a conversation he had with one of his fishing buddies about, he was in his 50s, I think, and he said that he didn't feel like he felt anymore. Do you remember that conversation? It was one of your fishing guys who just said, like, I don't, you get to this place where you're just kind of numbed out, where nothing.
No, I think it was Ron Basinger. Do you remember Ron Basinger? Insulator. It was in the union negotiations, and we were caucused, and he was talking about, you just go through life and you just lose your sense of wonder. You lose that as you go along, because you're just going and you're just doing and you're just putting stuff away, and you just don't have that. Yeah. You just don't have those feelings of it anymore. Nothing feels grand. Nothing feels great. It's just, everyday mundane stuff after a certain point in time.
Yeah.
I thought that was what you're referring to.
Yeah. I think there was somebody else. There's another fishing guy that you were talking to, but it was just same thing of, I don't feel, you get to this point where you're so numbed out. And it was somebody who had said something to you about, like, just the understanding that they didn't feel really, right?
Sure.
You're just numb. And so when Cameron and I started doing this work together, where I say together, it was a joint effort. It was more pulling.
I was going to say there was some dragging and some kicking and some screaming. I remember some of that stuff. Yeah. But not so much the dragging anymore, or the kicking or the screaming anymore. That's subsided. Yeah.
So the reason I set the stage for that is Cameron was one of those people who wasn't feeling. I was one of those people who wasn't feeling. And I want to highlight that, because I want people to really understand that there is an option on the other side of that. If you find yourself in a position where you're going through life as well, just super numbed out, which we all do. We all have our numbs of choice, and just triage our lives with that. Know that there's a different way. And I have encouraged Cameron and held space with him enough where I feel like after this last year has been a noticeable difference, not only to me, but to other people around him. Amanda even said yesterday when she was over, a friend of ours stopped over, and she said, Cameron is like he's softer, you know, and I know Cameron hates the softer thing because he doesn't.
We don't use that.
We don't use that word. We use sharpened. You know, Cameron is sharpened, but for everyone else, we all know it's softer. We'll leave Cameron in his delusion. But it's.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. But it's lovely. It's a really lovely thing to not feel like you have to be this angry, you know, have this front and this protection on all the time. So the thing that he wrote is, this thing that you're dragging me into is fixing the part about not feeling things as you get older. And the thing that he's referencing, obviously, is just the work. Cameron has been going to therapy. He and I spent more nights out of the week on the couch talking about shit than anything else, just talking about things that are coming up, things that are triggering, how we're releasing that. I'm sharing with him things that are in my tool bag about how to process trauma, holding space for him. Cameron comes and does yin yoga with me and Linda on Wednesday nights, and breath work with Ksenia. I think it's been maybe 4 or 5 times that you've done that. And she's coming over again tomorrow, heads up. So, but as I've watched you do this work, it's been the honor of my life to hold space for you, because I noticed the difference. And I think that all the way around, you're just a better human being. You know, Cameron called me around this same time that he wrote that note, and he said, I went into Shields today and I had this sense of awe and wonder. And I thought, that's my goal. That's my goal, is to be able to help, you know, men and women. But I love the men component of it, because I think they're the ones that we've asked to carry more of the burden. And they're the ones that I think that we've not felt bad about them bleeding in the dark and carrying all of this weight. And there isn't really a platform for them to be able to find that 8-year-old boy again and realize that a lot of the bullshit that you put on top of it isn't supposed to be there, that you're supposed to have that awe and wonder. Shields is a cool place, you know, if you're a dude into hunting and fishing and stuff.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So to be able to go in there, you should have awe and wonder about how cool they do stuff. You know, we've gotten to this place where men and women just numb on top of everything. But men specifically, we've asked you to carry all of the weight of so many different things and not really talk about your trauma, because that makes you a pussy or makes you weak, or you know, you're not really encouraged to be able to embrace that and process that and have deep connections with other people. And by doing that, I think it limits how you're able to really enjoy this human experience. And I don't think it's meant to be like that.
Yeah, I agree. You know, one of the things that I've struggled with the most in this particular journey, as we'll call it, you know, is, yes, you know, you're absolutely right. There's all the things that we do to numb, and there's all the things that we do to push down the feelings and push down the emotions and whatever, because at the end of the day, you have to function, right? And, you know, as men, we're expected to be providers, and so we're always going over and above, you know, what our personal needs are to take care of those around us, whatever. And so there are so many things that get addressed first before you have, you know, the time, the luxury, right, of being able to examine things, you know, why you are the way that you are, why you do the things that you do. And for me, one of the most difficult things is just being able to identify what those things are in the first place. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about this all the time. When you're in the trenches, you lose perspective, and you just don't realize how bad things are when you're just, you know, day after day, you've got your nose to the grindstone, and you just continue to go, and you continue to do, and you produce, and you do the things that you think are appropriate, and you do the things that are right. And it just takes away from the overall perspective about why you really do those things, and why certain things are important or things bother you, trigger you, et cetera. And so it's difficult to take a step back often, right? To be able to get some perspective, to even be able to identify what you really need to be working on in the first place.
When did you feel like you had a willingness to start working on things?
Maybe not so much a willingness. I think that was part of the, kicking and screaming, getting drugged, but there's, sometimes karma is instant, and you can talk about, things that are coincidences all the time. Some people say that there's no such thing as a coincidence, and, people call it living right. You're living right when, certain things seem to align and certain things seem to fall in place. Miraculously, somebody that was on your mind walks around the corner and you bump into them, right? Things like that. And so when you start stacking up enough of those things where life's just going good because you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, you're working on things, you're making progress, and you're seeing how, all the BS just kind of falls away, and you have some sort of a clear path in front of you that's lined with all these, not coincidences, right? That kind of keep you focused on, hey, this is the right path. So it doesn't take very many of those types of experiences to make me realize, hey, I'm onto something, right? I got drug onto something, and Anne's got me onto something here. And so, a few data points and then I'm running, maybe not as quickly as other people do. I'm pretty slow when it comes to processing things because I like to be thorough, but progress is good. So
tell me about what the benefits of that progress are. Tell me about what you've seen as you've gotten to where you have in the work.
So that's a really big subject, and I'm going to say that it's not as much of an effect on me personally or on a person personally as it is what you see in the people around you, right? It's almost like everyone around you is accustomed to reacting a certain way during certain circumstances. Their knee-jerk reaction may be to get excited or to get angry or to get defensive or, take your pick. People's default reactions to most things are usually pretty consistent, And so when you kind of change your approach, wait a second and breathe before you react to stuff, come with, a measure of calm when it comes to whatever the circumstances are, it seems to have a profound effect on everyone around you, And so, yeah, little tweaks here for how you think or how you address stuff, taking the time to evaluate things a little bit further, count to 10 before you do something and let the emotions pass and, so that you can get to a measured reaction. It really does have an effect on everyone else that's around you. And talk about amazing. Like it's, and productive. It's bad enough when you have to sort through your own garbage to get to a good decision, but if you've reacted somehow, then everybody else has got to sort through their garbage before they can get to a decision also. And what a waste of time, just an absolute waste of time. So it's, there's a whole bunch of benefits as far as that goes. But I see it most I see most of my personal progress in the effect that it has on the people that are around me.
What is that? What does the work feel like to you on the daily? Like just a random sampling of what you feel like you're doing to work through things. Like when I say the work, what does that even mean to you?
That's a great question because I'm still answering that
For yourself?
for myself, and that's the thing. So while, the work is always there, the work isn't necessarily always consistent, right? It can be something different every day, and it's not just so much like I stated earlier, a lot of times you lose perspective and it's difficult to identify the things you should even be working on, right? So you can get lost in, like me, being defensive, and it becomes such an ingrained pattern of behavior that it's almost impossible to identify. Certainly with no perspective, if you're just doing the daily thing, you're never going to realize how defensive you are, And so once you're able to identify that, that yes, this is a problem, and I can see how defensiveness, my personal defensiveness has impact on all of my interpersonal relationships with everybody around me, and defensiveness is a bad one, right? That's it's probably the most contagious one of your character flaws, defects, whatever you want to call it, opportunities for solutions, like whatever you want to say about that. But the defensive one is probably the most contagious and probably the most poisonous. And it's at some point in time, you have to realize that if everybody around you is defensive about things, that the common denominator is you. Right. You're bringing that out in people because you're that way. And that's one of those things that my person plus over here was, I don't want to say she was so kind enough to bring to my attention.
I would love to tell that story.
Yeah, I'm sure you would love to tell all kinds of stories, and we probably don't have enough time to cover.
Oh, no, that's okay. Chase has cleared his whole day. He's here all day.
Even a small fraction of those. But yeah, so yes, identify what it is, whatever that takes, whether it's somebody that you trust saying, hey, what's going on with this? You do these things, you do this thing, I noticed this, whatever, if somebody actually takes the time to present something like that with you, listen.
Take it as a gift. Don't be defensive. Take it as a gift.
There's many people that don't have friends, or family that are good enough, that are close enough to be able to have those types of conversations with, right? So if somebody feels, strongly enough, they're going to say something to you about an act, a behavior, something like that. Listen, listen, they're the delivery might not be amazing, but deep down in there, they're coming from someplace that's trying to be helpful about that.
Did you feel like my defensive delivery wasn't amazing? And let me tell it so that you remember how it is.
You're a blunt instrument when it comes to things like that.
I am, but I was patient. So that's true.
Is that what we call that? Well, that's what patience looks like?
Well, here's the problem. So for me, I go at about 100 miles an hour, and Cameron goes at about 2 miles an hour. And so in our relationship, it has always been that, where I'm trying to slow down to wait, and he's trying to speed up to, maintain the delta in our difference, so that it's not so great. I had a conversation with Cameron about a year ago, where maybe it was longer, where I said, I don't deserve this defensive base layer, because to me, the defensiveness is just a blanket trigger. And think about that, right?
Yeah,
if you're listening at home, think about defensiveness is a blanket trigger.
It is.
Someone can't say anything to you at all. You literally have a fucking trigger that covers every single thing. So by doing that, you're avoiding deep connections with other people, whether you realize that you're doing that or not. And you can see that now from the other side. This is why I wanted to have Cameron on, because for those that know Cameron, this is going to be very eye-opening to listen to, because Cameron's an asshole. Cameron's the guy that drives a big truck, that road rages, that, all of those things. And with me being able to drop seeds and water them over the last 6 to 9 years of, hey, maybe go this way. Hey, and I'll just drop a seed and then bail because, it's a lot. It's a lot of energy and effort to try to break through someone's defensiveness. Right. And so a year ago or a year and a half ago, I said, I need you to get curious about this. As everyone knows, I encourage people to get curious about their shit so that you can't fix it if you don't know it. I need you to get curious about your defensiveness because I'm exhausted from having to break through that defensive layer every time I want to have a connection with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm your person. I ride hard for you. Cameron and I have been through ups and downs over the last 20 plus years. And, but I have shown that I ride hard for him and I shouldn't have to prove every time I say something that I shouldn't have to do the work to dig into through the defensive layer. I work with lots of different people and I'm explaining to him, you're taking away from my ability and my skittles, right? To be able to work with other people by every time that I want to get through to you, having to work through that. So we circled back several times. I put a reminder in my Outlook. Cameron said, I'm not sure, but I'm happy to look into it. And once a month for a couple of months, I would come back and the reminder would come up, CK Defensiveness. Let's dig into it. And he'd say, I haven't had time to chew into that yet. And I just would get a little bit more aggressive with my demands of him getting curious about that for himself. And in doing so, I'm happy that I did because I feel like this is the result because I think that was the first layer of really being able to even have a deep connection with you.
Way more than like the first layer, right? That's the big boulder that's in the middle of the stream. It is. I mean,
it is.
I don't think there's a bigger obstacle or a more important concept to understand when it comes to that defensiveness, right? I mean, that's it. Like you said, it's a blanket trigger, right?
It's a blanket trigger.
It's the universal donor for blood. Like it'll give a problem to anything. It doesn't matter what the subject is.
And then you cause your own suffering with everything, your reaction to literally everything.
You do, and you just don't realize how it shapes your reactions with everybody else, And if you can just take that nugget, boulder, whatever it is, if you can get it out of the way, everything improves. Right? And more skills for everyone at that point, right? And everybody loves that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody that listens to Anne knows that and loves that, right? And so, hugely important. But okay, now I've identified it, right? And now I've got somebody telling me, hey, you've got issues with this defensiveness, right? One of those things that you just don't normally think about, right? You just go and you live your life and you don't pay attention and you don't care, you don't understand things. It's just, you're not supposed to. You're just supposed to go and do, right? And so when you have somebody that's able to say, hey, wait a second, there's issues here and this is what I'm noticing and, whatever, if we could, figure out a way to work on that, whatever, then that'd be cool. Okay, so now you've identified it, right? Well, what do you do to fix it, right? Where does the work begin as far as that goes, right? And because, identifying it isn't enough, right? It's you can identify it and you can take the route of, okay, I'm just going to concentrate real hard on not being defensive. You can do that, temporarily and not very effectively. It's putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, right? You kept a couple drops of blood off the carpet, maybe, right? Whatever, but it's not fixing it, right? Just understanding the issue it's the first part and it's the first step, but you have to figure out what it is that causes that for you, right? And that's, like you say all the time, get curious about that. Yeah, get real curious about that and pick it apart 1,000 ways if you need to, right? I'm thorough. I'm going to go for every 1,000. I'm not going to lift up the one rock and find an answer and then walk away with it. I'm going to lift up every single rock and I'm going to find every single answer because if we're just going to go get this thing, we're going to get the whole thing and we're going to get it gone and we're going to get it done.
Just so the listeners know, that is as annoying as it sounds. Fucking wait waiting for that.
Yeah, whoa.
I'm lifted up the rock, found it, throw it away, got it, let's move on. And Cameron's like, I'm still back here on issue number 1. I'm like, Jesus Christ, we're going to be here another 20 years.
There's more rocks back here. We got to make sure there's nothing hiding
Cameron's got a lot of rocks. Cameron's got a lot of rocks.
Yeah.
Okay, but so what does that look like then for you? Like you've figured out, I understand the defensiveness. Now I'm going to get curious.
Now I'm curious, and now I'm figuring out where that comes from.
Yeah.
Right now I know that I have issues with past relationships with family and otherwise, right? That so you might even find yourself in an industry where people are just kind of minded towards certain ways, or they retain certain mindsets about stuff that just kind of fosters that personality in you. If get curious about that, notice that, and at first it's not necessarily where you'd have to have a course of action, right? Notice things, right? This is how I reacted in this particular way, right? Mm-hmm. Or I noticed that, something about this made me, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I've got an uneasy feeling about it. Whatever. It just, whatever you've identified, just start to notice the things that make you feel that way, right? At that point, what you're trying to do is you're just trying to put together a consistent data set, right? Now I don't just have an understanding of what the issue is. Now I have all these different circumstances that show how that affects me, right? Or I noticed it in this case, I noticed it in this case, I noticed it in this case. And then you can start to notice patterns, and you can start to notice similarities about those that really help you focus on why you felt that way. What was it about what that person said that triggered you, right? So then you're collecting data points at that point, right? So now it's like, okay, now I understand that I really get angry when somebody says, so somebody calls me stupid, whatever. Sure. Maybe everybody has their own stuff or whatever, but okay, let's say, use that for an example. I don't understand this, but every time I've noticed that somebody refers in a way that calls me stupid, I just get angry. I just, I lose it or whatever. Okay, cool. Now we've got something to really go back and look at, right? Where did that come in, right? Mm-hmm. How long ago did that come into, my field of understanding, my consciousness or whatever, right? How far back can I go with that? And what was it there that made me feel that way? And when you can get back to where you feel like what are the roots of those, then you can really analyze that and excuse me, pick that apart, right? And start to feel what the genesis of that really is and address it, right? And, maybe it was a misunderstanding from a whole long time ago that sent you down a wrong road, or not. I'm really fond of plausible alternative theories about things. They really help me sharpen my stance on things. At the end of the day, we're just not really sure what people's motives are. You just never know. And you can have a case of the ass over something that somebody said, and maybe they misspoke, or they didn't get their words out the way they intended to, and it created a whole situation for you that you just built up in your head, and it turned into this whole thing. And now you start to feel that way. You have feelings based on a misunderstanding, and then you have actions based on those feelings. And then here you are, sometime down the road, and now these feelings have created actions, and they've got reactions from people around you. And, it was built on something that was just,
it was a lie anyways.
It was a lie. It was bullshit, right? And it was probably a lie you told yourself.
Of course,
of course. Which most lies are, right? I mean, that's how they tend to start, right? Yeah. If I can fool myself, I can fool anybody, right? And so yeah. So you dig and you dig and you dig and you dig and get to the bottom of where that comes from, and then you address those things from there. Make sure you have a clear understanding of that, so you can. Sometimes it's real easy to fix.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can identify, the lie or the misunderstanding or whatever that started you down the path. Sometimes it's a little bit more deep-seated. Sometimes those things come from early childhood, and so they have a special, a special way you have to go about relieving those things, and that's probably different for everybody. But it can be difficult, most certainly.
Yeah, I think the thing where it starts with the self-awareness, whether it has to be your own self-awareness or a trusted person that has earned a spot at your table of life that brings something to you that just says this behavior is not okay and this isn't something that I'm interested in dealing with, you know? And I was at a place where no problems, a year ago or whenever we had that conversation, no problems, figure it out. But I can't have a deep connection with you because I'm not interested in spending as many Skittles as it's going to take to get through that defensive base layer every single time I want to have a connection with you. And so
it's just not fair.
It's just not fair. It's just not fair. And so
I hate that word, but
but it's applicable here because it's not. It's when you realize the amount of energy that I had to continue to put in to try to connect with you. That's not okay.
It's not okay.
And so having you be at this place now where you understand that and you're far enough, a year plus back where you can say like, you're right, that isn't right. But then look at all of the things, all of the work that you've been doing. Michael Singer has this whole thing about the low-hanging fruit and not storing other things. So if you can use traffic and weather as low-hanging fruit, don't complain about those things. Who gives a fuck if somebody's driving 2 miles an hour under the speed limit or you can't get around somebody? Handle it. Like when you road rage, what you're showing is that you can't handle that. And what kind of a child adult can't handle life as it's happening, right? But that's what we all do. We all rage about stuff. We all cause our own suffering because then we're acting a fool because we couldn't handle whatever it was in the first place. So
all self-inflicted.
All self-inflicted, right? Yeah. And so it's lovely to hear you say that and to have you regurgitate back to me what you've been doing over the last year, because obviously I've had a front row seat to it. But it is nice for you to say and to realize it isn't fair for somebody else to have to go through that defensive layer. Okay. And if you're listening, get curious about that with yourself. Get curious also with yourself about the relationships you have in life, because I don't have anybody that sits at my table of life that I'm not willing to stick my neck out on the line and tell them the things that I see. How they receive that, that's on them. And I've had friendships that have broken up over that, and I'm totally okay with that. I've also had people bring stuff to me, and yes, maybe that stings, and I need to receive that and take that in and do some work on what that looks like. But what's the point of having people at your table if you're not pushing each other to be the best versions of yourself that you can? Like, we're not meant to just like group up and then have that be people that we just numb out with. Like, great.
Numb out or gossip.
Or gossip or whatever that looks like.
Things, right.
Absolutely. But what a waste of life. Like, this is a really incredible human experience that we have if you decide to engage with it in that way. I don't understand where people got to this place after high school or college and it's like, okay, we've learned all of the things we need to learn. Right. And you don't know anything about yourself. And that just feels like such a disservice that you're doing, because the more that you learn about yourself and the more that you work on yourself, the better that your life will be all the way around. Like you said, people, you're teaching people all around you how to treat you by being defensive and not wanting to connect with you. Like, I can't tell you, I've spent the last 20 plus years listening to people tell me what an asshole Cameron is. Like, I fucking get it. I get it. But so to him being at this place after all of that time of really feeling into things, really having that sense of awe and wonder that's coming back for you, because you're willing to do the work. And the more that you do, the sharper your tools are. It's impressive to me to watch. When is another time that you felt like the 8-year-old boy in your soul situation? Tell me. Is there another time that you remember that recently? And while you're thinking about that, let me tell the listeners one that stood out to me, not for you, but for someone else. So Cameron and I went to a D-backs game, and there was the security guy that during the in-between innings goes and stands out on the field and looks out at the crowd. And he was standing out there, probably 50, 60-year-old man maybe. And the players from the dugout were walking by and were fist bumping him. And I could literally see his 8-year-old boy inside of his soul smile. Like, he was keeping it cool, right? But to me, there's nothing better than that. Yeah. And I've seen that happen with you as well when you call and say the Shields thing. That's the 8-year-old boy in your soul, right? Who's having this on wonder. And when people realize we have all gotten to this place in society where we just triage our shitty lives, right? You have this job you hate, this things that aren't working out, like whatever, and you just triage it by whatever your numb of choice is. It can be alcohol, it can be food, it can be all of the things. What you don't realize is, yes, you're numbing the shitty parts, but you're also numbing the really good shit.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that to me, you use that as the public service announcement that it is. There's a different way. I have such high highs now, and yeah, I had to get through some pretty shitty low lows to get to this point, but I can handle anything now. I don't have low lows in that same way anymore. Other than the whole, we just dropped your son off at college in California and drove away. That's been a pretty rough one. But when you realize that you can have those high highs again, and you don't have to just be numbed out all the time, to me, it makes me get curious about what does that even look like? Because that sounds way better than this shitty whatever it had been that we'd been doing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that most people miss the part about the high highs.
Yeah.
You know, it's thank you for saying something about that also. And it's, for me, there's another layer there that a person needs to peel back and a person needs to address, because, you know, a lot of times we're told to show some restraint when it comes to feeling those high highs, you know, and that's another one of those things that becomes a pattern of behavior, and we don't even know why we got there, right? And so and you know, in a lot of ways we're taught to be that success is bad, you know, and that there's some shame that's associated with that, and that you should, you know, you should carry some sort of shame and some sort of guilt for your success, you know, and that kind of transfers over to the high feelings also, you know, and so it's important, right? It's important to address where those feelings came from. You have to understand, you know, why that is, because what's on the other side of that is the good stuff, right? The getting back to the high highs, you know, where you're just, you know, smiling and fist bumping with yourself sometimes because it's, you know, something that you felt or something that you accomplished or something that you created or whatever that is, you know. Yeah, all that stuff's hiding in there. You know, it's just so many years of crap,
bullshit on top of it, right? It's a box that, you know, your 8-year-old version is a box that you put up in the attic and forgot all about, because there was all of this stuff that happened, whether it was specific trauma that happened to you or if it was just life in general, right? People think, oh, my trauma isn't as big as so-and-so's, or so-and-so had this, and trauma is trauma, you know? It is. So when you realize you start with the innocence of a child, which to me I reference as the 8-year-old, the innocence of a child, and then all of these things that happened on top of it. And whether it's what you're talking about with your defensiveness and somebody, you know, a lie that your mind told you, and then you built this whole scaffolding on it or whatever, once you start peeling that stuff back, you find that 8-year-old that's in there, whatever version of that is that you had, and to be able to engage with life from that perspective again is everything. That's the coolest thing on the planet.
Yeah,
like I feel like it is, right? I feel like I've cracked a code to something by doing that. It's like, you know, if you're listening out there, think about what was something that you really loved to do when you were 8, or whenever your innocence of a child. You know, think about what that looked like, whether that's going and out in nature exploring or going and whatever it is, it doesn't even fucking matter, right? But think about what that is and think, you could actually have that back again on the daily, because I'm on the daily. You can ask me any day, and I will tell you this is the best day of my life. And I feel like
that's actually true.
It is actually true. And people around me are getting real fucking annoyed with it, and I don't care. And I don't care. Like, I will show you the path. I will show you the path. You know, the book that I'm finishing writing right now has all of these little tips and tricks that make it attainable, so that you can, it isn't a whole thing. You don't have to read hundreds of, you know, personal growth books like I have. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on retreats and you know, healing modalities and all that shit. You can make a difference working towards that 8-year-old awe and wonder, just with small little tweaks and tips. That's what I want people to be able to do, to know that that's an option.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put a little plug in here for Anne's book right now. Also, I've had the opportunity to provide some assistance with editing in these last couple of rounds, and I'm going to say by the book. She's onto something. It's a condensed version of all the things she's been working on for several years, and I can personally vouch for just about everything she's got to say in there.
I've got good data points.
She's got some good data points for certain, and they hit home with me personally.
Well, just so you know, this is the reason why I wrote the book, because then I'm like, hey, do you want to edit it? I'm glad that everyone else will be able to buy it, but it's mainly just for Cameron, because he's been a really tough. You're my toughest case by far. So for the listeners, if you have a table at my seat. Right?
Seat at your table.
Seat at my table. If you have a table at my seat, if I have it's a whole thing.
It's still got to be your bowl.
It's still got to be your bowl. If you have a seat at my table, know that I've been planting seeds with you for a while. and you can either fall over with your legs in the air, you can keep fucking, acting like you're playing hard to get. But that's the reason I'm having you on here today. That's the reason why I asked you to, yes, I value your opinion when it comes to, your take on the book. But that's a love letter, right?
Yeah.
How lovely is that to be able to understand that that's something where he's not going to read a self-improvement book that's not written by his wife. Right. And so being able to do that has been awesome, because the things that I've put in this book are all things that, for whatever reason, the universe, the big guy, whatever you call your higher power, put all of these people in my path in a way about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, that came to me in such crazy ways, with just being at their worst, these people that just needed. And I felt like I had just been primed to my tool bag was full. My tools were sharpened. I had been working on this for, 6 to 8 years, whatever. Being able to really then share those gave me the energy that I have right now. I've always been very energetic, but gave me such an energy and a passion to want to continue to share with people, because as I shared with people and as I met with people and, here's a tip here, here's a tool here, they would tell me what they were going through. As I was able to do that, I was able to see what a huge impact that made in their lives. Because when Cameron sets down his defensiveness, he opens up himself for connection to everybody. And like he said, it literally has changed everything for him. I watch as he processes things. I watch as he engages with other people. I watch as he receives things where it doesn't have that shitty steel plate of defensiveness. What are you laughing
Well,
about?
I'm laughing about it because you also are the complaint department for my life. And so,
I've been very motivated.
Yeah, very motivated. But I'm hoping that as a result of this, the amount of complaints that make it to the complaint department have, they've ceased or dwindled or
turned to compliments.
Turned to
compliment.
that. Yeah,
I've had some compliments about you. It was like
had to hang a compliment box on the wall there next to the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's fascinating to me, because being able to understand that this was even possible, right? You're 50 years old. This is something that you're just unpacking at 48, 49. Yeah. How amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I'm going to lead into something here, because I think it's probably, for me, the number one motivator in any of this. So, I call it the opportunity cost of thought, right? If you remember back to your, economics in high school or whatever, and understanding what opportunity costs are, they can be extravagant sometimes. The more important your time becomes, or the more important your resources become, the higher those opportunity costs are. But what noodles around in your head also is limited. It's finite. You can only think about so many things, right? There's only so many things that you can accomplish. And if you can't think about those things because your mind is stuck with garbage, absolute garbage, unprocessed trauma that makes you feel certain ways, it makes you vengeful, those thoughts don't get you anywhere. Mm-hmm. Anger is not productive. Thinking about anger doesn't get you anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. Getting back at people doesn't get you anywhere. Like there's every single one of those thoughts that you have robs you of a positive thought that you could have, where you could be productive towards something. And if you start stacking up a lifetime worth of those opportunity costs with your own thoughts, it's expensive. It is super expensive. You've got to stop it, right? And for me, coming to that realization was huge. And it's, oh my God, what could I do? What could I have been doing all this time? Where could I be? What could I have accomplished had I not been stuck, with all this garbage that I never addressed, I never processed. I was just down in the trenches, just doing, right?
And just angry. And just fucking angry.
Just angry, defensive, all the things. But every one of those negative thoughts takes up space where you could have a positive, productive thought, right? And so it's, that poison feels good, doesn't get you anywhere at the end of the day.
Well, and when you look at something and it's like, okay, you have this bowl and it's full, you think, oh, I want to have all of these things. People think that. I want to have, whatever it is, time for this or energy for this or whatever it looks like. Well, your fucking bowl is full. You get to choose what you carry around. So if it's resentment and defensiveness and anger, excellent. Carry it until you fucking drop. That's what you're doing. Know that and know that that's a choice because you didn't even realize that was a choice, right?
You don't.
Now, given the choice, right? Cameron and I talk about it all the time where it's like if he's angry about something or if he's working through this trauma or that trauma or whatever it is, it's like, okay, you can either have this or that. It's one or the other. You don't get to have both. So do you want to have this amazing, open mind that you can work towards in the business that you're growing or the opportunities that you're pursuing? Or do you want to sit and build stories in your head that are built on fucking lies that either you told yourself or you misunderstood or whatever it was from however long ago? Who gives a fuck? If you're still ruminating over your past shit, because you haven't fucking processed it and pulled those weeds and gotten them out of there, I encourage you to do that. It opens your life up to endless possibilities. Literally infinite possibilities of things because anything is possible, but it isn't when you're dragging around this ball and chain of shit that's just weight. You're bleeding in the dark. You don't even fucking realize you're doing it. Like men. I look at, men to me are an important cause. For you, for my father, for my brothers, for my son, for the men that my daughters date. It's important because I just don't think there's been enough attention that's been put on that. And so I'll scream it from the rooftops. Like, you don't even realize you're fucking doing it. Take a look at your life. Just do a quick inventory of your life and see where you're literally just numbing out because you're in this place where your life is shit. You're just doing what you think you're supposed to do by holding the steady job and keeping everything together and whatever. And when you realize that's not doing anybody any favors, you have zero emotional intelligence. You're literally putting that burden on the rest of the family because they don't know where you're going to come from and where you're going to blow up and where you're going to whatever. You think you're doing the right thing. Newsflash, you're fucking not. Right? Call me. Call me. I'll sit down and be real fucking honest with you and poke holes in the things that get you to be curious about yourself, right? And it doesn't take a whole bunch. It's just a matter of if you want to see change in your life, which we all should, right? Our whole thing on this planet should be how to be the best version of yourself. Your competition is yesterday's version of who you are.
Maybe not change, but improvement.
Whatever. You need to change. You're a fucking mess. For people that don't know you, you're a mess.
I'll take improvement,
Sure.
I don't want to change the path I'm on. But I would like to improve.
I would like to change a lot of things about you. That's going to be the next, that's what we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about. I have it in alphabetical order.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure. I can't wait to see that.
I know. No, but it is excellent to realize that because if you look back at the positive changes that have happened over the last year in your life, only because you were willing to listen to me, you heard me and said, right? It's important. The defensive layer in a relationship, if you're in a couple, if you're the wife of that couple or the female in that couple, and you're trying to have this same conversation, here's what I encourage, because people will listen to this and then say, okay, great, but then how do you do that, right? So for Cameron and I, as we were working through the defensive base layer for stuff, when he would get defensive about things, I would ask him, because I could feel his energy shift, and I would ask him, what did you hear with what I just said? And he would tell me what he heard, and then if you're in it to win it together, right, and you're both on the same team, then I can say, well, here's what I actually said, or here's what my intent was with what I said. And then it gives you, as the person that's working on the defensiveness, an opportunity to kind of pick that apart a little bit and realize, okay, let me listen to the part of my brain that isn't trying to sabotage me, right? My wife only wants what's good for me. That's why she's in the trenches with me. Like whatever that looks like, why did I take it from that place? It helps you get curious about that because no one else is going to be able to help you get curious. Agreeing to go on this journey with Cameron for him to start unpacking his shit was not easy because I planted seeds for long enough and then I had to stop being patient because I felt like I was going to die if I had to wait another moment. I did. It literally, it felt terrible
I felt your frustration.
Right, exactly. Right. So saying it in a place where he was able to actually hear that and then know that I'm on your team, I'm ride or die for you, you know that. And then having those conversations so that when something does trigger him, which is everything, helping him to get curious about that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think it's important also because we talked about earlier when somebody has the has a motive to come to you and say, hey, look, I've been noticing this about your behavior or whatever. And it may be something new to you. You may not realize how defensive you are, how quickly you go from zero to pissed off or whatever, But if you have somebody that's genuinely concerned enough about that brings it to you, ask that person as you progress, hey, point it out for me. Next time I do that, let me know, right? Yes. Catch me in the moment so that please, I've got some context. Yes. I've got a better understanding. There's a lot of things that we miss because, things are out of context, good, bad, whatever. There's things we miss because they're taken out of context. But if you've got somebody that cares enough, about you and what you're doing, that they'll sit with you and say, right there, what you just did, that's it. And then it will help you to further identify and further analyze and understand, where that disconnect can be. It's that's one of those things that a lot of people maybe need to think about for a minute also, because almost without exception, our spouses have our best interests in heart, right? So if they're going to tell you something, right, they're not attacking you, right? But if you feel attacked,
if you're working on it together.
In most cases, if you feel attacked, it's probably something that's your fault, right? That's your problem because you're probably not being attacked. Again, there's exceptions.
Of course. Well, and set up a safety zone too, right? So if you're interested in working with your partner on stuff, set yourself up for success and say, hey, I'm going to call safety zone. When I call safety zone, I'm coming from a good place with what I say. I'm not going to have to. I'm not going to say that every time because with Cameron, I would have to say, I'm coming from a good place, but I'd have to set this whole stage. But it is. But if you care enough about somebody, call fucking safety zone. And what that means is you're going to listen and receive, and don't respond. Just listen and receive, right?
It's not easy to do.
Exactly.
Just heads up.
And I'm not going to say anything else. Right. I'm going to say whatever it is, and then leave it there, and then that person can do whatever they want with it.
Right.
But anyways, I digress. We will continue having these conversations as Cameron progresses because he's a really excellent resume builder. For those of you that knew Cameron before a year ago and really are able to kind of see the progress that he's made now, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild, and I'm happy that you were willing to come on the pod today and share with me. Didn't even need tissues, which was excellent.
That's good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. So anyways, thanks for listening, everybody. That's our time for today. If you have questions, suggestions, or think you have a story you'd like to add and want to be on the pod, send us an email. Our email address is ladies@letsgetnakedpodcast.com. And please do all the things to support the pod so that we can continue to do this important work. Follow, share, rate, and review. Catch you next time.